I came home 2 days early from a work trip. My flight landed late, and by the time I got to the house, it was close to midnight. The lights were off, and everything seemed quiet. I dropped my bag near the door and headed upstairs, trying not to wake my husband. As I walked into the bathroom to wash my face, something caught my eye. There was a pink toothbrush next to his. I stared at it for a moment. I never bought that. It wasn't mine. I opened the cabinet and saw a bottle of floral-scented perfume I didn't recognize. A half-used face cream sat beside it. None of these things belonged to me. I walked slowly back into the bedroom. He was asleep, or at least pretending to be. I looked around the room. A pair of high heels was tucked neatly under my chair. Not mine either. My heart started beating faster. I felt cold all over. I didn't want to believe what I was seeing. The next morning, I asked him directly, "Whose things are in the bathroom?" I tried to keep my voice steady. He barely looked up from his phone. "What are you talking about?" I told him about the toothbrush, the perfume, the shoes. His face didn't change. He shrugged and said, "Maybe you bought them and forgot. You're always stressed from work." I felt like I was going crazy. I knew what was mine. I hadn't imagined those things. I tried again. "That pink toothbrush. I've never used one like that." He laughed softly. "You're being paranoid. It's probably old. You're overthinking again, like always." His tone was calm, even friendly, but every word felt like a slap. He was lying. I could see it in his eyes, but he made me question myself. I didn't argue. I just nodded and said nothing. For the next few days, I kept looking around the house. There were little things, an unfamiliar hairbrush, a coffee mug I didn't remember, music playing on his speaker that I never heard him enjoy before. But every time I brought it up, he said the same thing. I was imagining things, reading into nothing. At night, I lay awake while he slept beside me. I stared at the ceiling and tried to convince myself I was wrong, that I was tired, anxious, or losing my mind. But deep down, I knew something was wrong. Someone else had been here, someone who wasn't me. I wasn't ready to fight yet, but I stopped trusting what he said. I started listening more carefully, watching more closely. I began writing things down, dates, times, what I saw. I didn't tell anyone. I didn't cry. I just waited, and I planned to find out the truth. I bought 2 small cameras online and hid them myself. One I placed inside a photo frame in the living room. The other I tucked into the bookshelf across from our bed. They were small, silent, and hard to notice. I didn't tell anyone. I just wanted proof. For a few days, I let them record while I pretended nothing was wrong. I acted normal, talked when he talked, smiled when I had to. Inside, I was numb. I spent my nights alone in the guest room. He didn't seem to care. One afternoon while he was out, I sat at my desk and watched the recordings. I kept the volume low and my hands still. What I saw made my stomach twist. The first clip showed a woman walking through the front door like she belonged there. She had a key. She took off her coat and hung it on my hook. She poured herself wine, sat on my couch, and turned on the TV like it was her home. Another video showed her in our bedroom, laughing. She was wearing one of my dresses, one I hadn't seen in weeks. She opened my drawer, picked through my jewelry, and held up my necklace to her neck. She smirked. Later, I saw her lying in our bed next to him. They held hands. They whispered things I didn't want to hear. She took selfies in the mirror, wearing my clothes, holding my perfume. At one point, she tossed one of my blouses aside and called it boring. In one clip, while on a video call, she pointed the camera around the house and told someone, "She has no idea. This place is basically mine now." I watched quietly, no tears. Just a tight feeling in my chest that didn't go away. She was comfortable in my home, living like it belonged to her. And he let her. He never looked over his shoulder, never acted nervous. He had moved her in while I was away, like I didn't exist. I rewound one clip and watched again. She stood in front of my closet, wearing my robe. She said to him, "She's not coming back soon, right?" He just nodded and kissed her cheek. I paused the video. That was enough. I didn't scream. I didn't confront him. I just saved the clips and backed them up. Every file, every second. I watched her touch my things, sleep in my place, laugh like I was a joke, and I knew what I had to do next. He thought I would break. He thought I'd beg or cry, but I didn't. I stayed quiet. I smiled when I had to. I let them both keep thinking they were safe, but now I knew the truth, and they had no idea what was coming. One morning, I was sitting at the kitchen table, drinking tea. He walked in like everything was normal, phone in hand, no hello. Then he said something that made my heart stop. "We've decided to try an open marriage," he said, like it was nothing. I looked up slowly. "We?" I asked. He didn't blink. "Yeah, me and her. You're not meeting my needs, and I think this is the best way forward." There was no discussion, no warning, no respect. Just a cold statement like I didn't matter. I didn't say anything. I just stared at him. He took a bite of toast and walked away. Later that day, she started acting even bolder. She came into the kitchen, humming, wearing my necklace. She called him babe in front of me. She picked up his laundry like a wife would. When she saw me watching, she smiled. She cooked meals and told him what to buy. She sat on the couch with her legs up like it was her place. She talked over me, laughed loudly, and acted like I was invisible. When guests came over, she answered the door. She poured drinks, asked people to sit, played music. She looked like the host. I felt like a stranger in my own house. What shocked me most was how no one said anything. Friends came by and greeted her with fake smiles. Family members asked polite questions and pretended not to notice the tension. No one asked where I slept or how I was doing. No one looked uncomfortable. Once, I pulled my sister aside and asked, "Can you believe this?" She looked away and said, "Maybe things are different now. You should talk it out." Talk it out. I was being replaced in front of everyone, and all I got was silence. I tried calling an old friend. She hesitated, then said, "Maybe he just needs time to figure things out." That was the moment I understood. No one was coming to help. No one was going to speak up. He had twisted the story before I could even open my mouth, and she played her part well. She laughed louder when I walked in. She decorated the living room with new pillows. She even moved some of my things into boxes and left them in the corner. When I asked about it, she said, "Just trying to tidy up. You weren't using them anyway." Every word, every action felt like a knife, but I stayed calm. I didn't argue. I didn't raise my voice. I just watched her take more space. I let him believe I had given up. But inside, something shifted. I didn't feel shocked anymore, or confused. I felt done. I stopped hoping he'd see what he was doing. I stopped waiting for someone to stand by me. They wanted this to be their home. They thought I'd step aside. They were wrong. I didn't cry. I didn't shout. I didn't tell them I was planning anything. I just stayed quiet and made a few calls when I was alone. First, I called a lawyer. I explained the situation in simple words. He asked for the house papers. I already had them in a folder, locked in a drawer. He looked through them and nodded. "This house is yours," he said. "Only your name is on the deed." I felt a calm I hadn't felt in weeks. Later that day, I reached out to a real estate agent. She sounded friendly on the phone. I told her I wanted a fast sale, private, no signs, no open house. She said she had a few cash buyers who wouldn't ask many questions. That's exactly what I needed. I kept everything quiet. I didn't change my routine. I acted like nothing was going on. I still made tea, still worked on my laptop, still gave short replies when spoken to. No one could tell anything was different. I checked the deed again, just to be sure. It was true. My parents had given me the house before I got married. I never added his name. He never asked. I guess he assumed it was shared now. He didn't notice the papers missing. He didn't notice the extra phone calls or the quiet meetings. He was too busy with her. I took pictures of the house and sent them to the agent. She scheduled a private showing for one buyer who paid in cash. The meeting would happen while he was at work. Everything moved fast, just like I wanted. No noise, no warning. At night, while they sat watching TV, I sat in the corner with a book, but I wasn't reading. I was waiting. Every time I walked through a room, I looked at it differently. Not like a place I loved, but like something I was about to let go of. And it didn't hurt. I packed slowly. Just the things that mattered. Photos, jewelry, important documents, clothes. I hid the boxes in the garage under old blankets. I didn't tell a soul what I was doing. They thought I was defeated, but I wasn't. I was almost ready. The buyer came on a Tuesday afternoon, a quiet man in his 50s. He walked through the house with the agent, asked a few questions, and said he'd take it, full cash. No delay. The papers were ready the next day. I signed them quietly in the lawyer's office. No one saw me leave, and no one asked where I went. Back at the house, I began packing the last few things. I kept only what mattered. My documents, a few clothes, some books, and small keepsakes. I didn't touch the rest. I left behind furniture, dishes, everything he and she used daily. I didn't need any of it. Each day, I packed a little more. I worked at night when the house was quiet. I moved boxes into my car one by one, never more than 2 at a time. It looked normal, like errands. No one questioned anything. He was busy anyway. He didn't look up from his phone. She followed him around, always talking, always smiling. They were wrapped up in their own world. They didn't notice me watching. Once I carried out a box of photo albums. She saw me and asked, "Cleaning up?" I smiled. Just organizing. That was enough for her. The days passed and everything was set. The buyer would take the house at the end of the week. The money would go straight to my account. No delays, no mistakes. I stayed calm. I didn't change my voice or my face. I cooked simple meals. I nodded when spoken to. I made no sudden moves. I kept the keys in my bag and the final documents under my bed. He didn't ask where I was going or what I was doing. He didn't care. That worked in my favor. She started planning changes to the house. She talked about painting the bedroom, changing the curtains, buying new lamps. I listened. I nodded. I didn't say a word. They thought they were building a life together. They thought I was fading into the background, but I wasn't going anywhere. I had already made my move, and soon they would learn what silence really meant. It was late at night when I went to the lawyer's office for the final step. The lights were low and the building was quiet. I signed the last page with a steady hand. The house was no longer mine. It was done. The lawyer handed me the papers and said, "The buyers will take possession in the morning." I nodded and left without a word. Back at the house, everything was still. They were both upstairs. I moved through the rooms slowly, taking one last look. I didn't feel sad, just finished. I placed the signed documents in my bag and set the house keys on the kitchen counter. Then I packed my small suitcase, the last one. I had already moved everything else out, little by little. I didn't rush. I washed my cup, wiped down the counters, and folded the blanket on the couch. Everything looked normal. The bedroom door upstairs was closed. No sounds came from behind it. They were asleep, unaware of what I had just done. I opened the front door gently. The air outside was cool and quiet. My car was already packed. I locked the door one last time and slid the keys into the mailbox, just as the new owners had asked. As I got into my car, I didn't look back. I drove away without hesitation. The streets were empty. The city looked peaceful in the early morning dark. I parked 2 blocks away and waited. I wanted to see it happen. Just after sunrise, a moving van pulled up to the house. A couple stepped out, holding coffee cups and smiling. The woman unlocked the door with the spare set. They walked in like they belonged there. I watched from a distance, hidden behind tinted glass. A few minutes later, I saw the bedroom curtain shift. A face peeked out, then disappeared fast. I imagined the confusion, the panic, the rush to get dressed. Maybe they ran downstairs in disbelief. Maybe they yelled, but I didn't need to see it. I started the engine and drove off. The house was theirs now. Let him explain how he lost it overnight. Let her explain why her things were inside someone else's home. I didn't leave a note. I didn't leave a warning. I just left. And for the first time in a long while, I felt completely free. He came downstairs late in the morning, rubbing his eyes and yawning. He was wearing an old t-shirt and looking for coffee. He stopped when he saw 2 strangers standing in the kitchen. The new owners had already unpacked a few boxes. The woman was arranging cups on the shelf. The man was reading the morning paper at the table. My husband froze. His mouth opened, but no words came out. "Can I help you?" the new owner asked politely. "This is my house," he said, voice rising. The man looked confused. "Number, we bought it. Everything was signed yesterday." He ran back upstairs, yelling her name. She came out, half-dressed, asking what was going on. They argued, loud and fast. He grabbed his phone and started calling me, but nothing went through. He tried again, then checked his messages. No response. He looked for me online. Nothing. I had blocked him everywhere. Calls, texts, social media, email. Every way he could reach me was closed. He went back downstairs and demanded answers, but the new owners showed him the signed deed and bill of sale. All legal, all complete. His voice got louder. He shouted that this was a mistake, that I couldn't do this. But the papers said otherwise. He had no right to stay there. No name on the deed. No proof it was ever his. He tried calling friends, hoping someone knew where I was. No one answered. He didn't even know where I had moved. He called my sister. She hung up. He went to the lawyer's office, but the lawyer showed him the documents and reminded him, the house was mine, always had been. There was nothing to fight for. The mistress packed her bags in silence. Her smile was gone. She didn't speak. Later that day, they stood outside with their things on the sidewalk. Cars passed by slowly. Some neighbors stared. No one helped. They waited for a ride, but no one came. He sat on the curb, head in his hands. She paced in circles, muttering under her breath. The house they thought was theirs now belonged to someone else, and I was gone. He tried one last time to find me, sent a message through an old friend. Please just talk to me. But I had already deleted everything. Every photo, every number, every trace of him. He had made his choice. Now he was living with the result. He went to a lawyer, hoping to fight back. He thought he could take something from me. Maybe the house, maybe money. He believed he had a chance. The lawyer looked over the papers and shook his head. You're not on the deed. You have no claim, he said. There's nothing we can do. He didn't take that well. He raised his voice, said I had tricked him, said it wasn't fair, but none of that mattered. The law was clear. He left the office angry and empty-handed. With no place to go, he asked the mistress if they could stay at her friend's house. She hesitated, then said no. She started pulling away. She didn't like the new situation. No home, no plan, no comfort. She told him she needed space. She said it wasn't what she expected. Then she walked out with her suitcase and didn't come back. Now he was alone. No money, no partner, no roof over his head. He tried reaching out to people he knew, old friends, colleagues, even family. At first, some listened, but then they started to pull away too. They had heard things about what he did, about how he let someone move into his wife's home, about how it all fell apart. Some were polite but distant. Others stopped answering completely. Slowly, the people who used to laugh at his jokes, invite him to dinners, or praise him at work began to vanish. No one wanted to be part of his mess. He looked for a job, but nothing stable came up. His resume was good, but his energy was off. People noticed. He didn't seem like someone they could trust. He moved between cheap hotels and borrowed couches. Sometimes he had to sleep in his car, and every time he thought about how his life used to be, he remembered what he lost. He had a home, a wife, a quiet, simple. Now he had stories and regret. That was the cost of what he did, and I didn't have to say a word. I found a small apartment in a quiet neighborhood. It had big windows, white walls, and a little balcony with plants. It wasn't large, but it felt fresh and clean. It was mine. I decorated it the way I wanted. Soft lights, simple furniture, shelves filled with books. No noise, no tension, no one walking in without respect, just calm. A week later, I started a new job. It was nothing fancy, but it made me feel alive again. The people were kind, the hours fair, and I liked the work. I got up early, drank coffee by the window, and went to work with a clear head. With the money from the house, I bought a car, a silver one, small and neat. It wasn't about the brand, it was about having freedom. I could go wherever I wanted, whenever I felt like it. One morning, I packed a small bag, got in the car, and drove toward the coast. No plan, no company, just me and the road. I stopped when I wanted, ate at little diners, took long walks near the water. I stayed in a hotel with sea views and fell asleep to the sound of waves. I didn't check my phone much. I didn't worry about anything. I just breathed, slowly and deeply. For the first time in months, I wore clothes that made me feel comfortable. I smiled at strangers. I read in cafes and watched the sunset without thinking about anyone else's needs. I remembered how quiet life could be when no one is trying to hurt you, how strong it feels to stand on your own 2 feet. I no longer walked on eggshells. I no longer waited for someone to care. I made my own food, paid my own bills, and listened to my own thoughts. I didn't need revenge anymore. I didn't need apologies or explanations. I didn't look back. I built something new, something simple, honest, and mine. And with each passing day, I felt lighter. I didn't just leave the house behind. I left behind the version of me who accepted less. Now I chose everything on my terms, and it felt like power. One afternoon, my phone buzzed. It was a number I didn't recognize, but I knew who it was. I stared at the screen for a few seconds, then let it go to voicemail. Later, I saw the message icon. One voicemail. I sat on the couch, phone in hand, and looked at it for a long time. I didn't press play. I already knew what it would say. Apologies, regret, maybe tears, maybe promises to change, but none of it mattered. He had made his choice. He thought I would stay quiet forever. He thought I had no power. He didn't think I'd leave, or that I'd win. Now he had nothing, and I had peace. I selected the message, held down the delete button, and erased it without a second thought. No reply, no second chance. I didn't need to hear excuses. I didn't need fake sorrow. What I needed, I had already given myself: freedom. The past no longer followed me. The pain no longer owned me. He invited someone else into our home, so I showed them both the door. Do you think she did the right thing by selling the house and walking away without saying a word? Or should she have confronted them face to face before making her move? Let me know what you think in the comments. I'd love to hear your take. And if you want more stories like this, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss a new one.